witches, welcome back. If you don't already know me, I am Tiffany of Bewitching.Bemused. Today I want to talk about a really cool form of divination called throwing bones, which you've probably heard of. So we're going to discuss what it means, how to make your own, and how to do it. Now, when most people think about throwing bones, they think of the ancient arts of scapulomancy or osteomancy. In those practices, only bones, typically scapula, are used. And they're usually read either right after the animal is deceased or after it's been eaten. This is an ancient tradition that has been used all over the world. However, the version that I'm going to show you guys today is going to be just a little bit different. Now, this is by all means not the only version of bone casting or bone throwing for divination. However, this is the version that I use, and I love it because it feels very personal and very versatile. So as this video is by no means the be-all end-all in bone reading, I do highly suggest, if this piques your interest at all, to do further research and further study and check out some of the other styles, and especially look into the actual ancient traditions of bone reading involving, just bones. Now, if you prefer to only work with pieces of bone, by all means, this video still applies to you. However, in the version that I'm going to lay out, I'm going to use more than just bones. You can use bones, but you can also use shells, trinkets, buttons, stones, crystals, twigs, whatever your heart desires. So much like casting runes or shuffling a tarot or oracle deck, these items are mixed together and then, cast out. They fall out into a random pattern that you then have to interpret. Now, each individual item has its own meaning, but you will also read them in relation to one another. Again, much like the runes. Interpretation will also heavily rely on the context of your question, not to mention the position the items fall into and a few other factors that we'll go into. Now, this practice is highly interpretive and intuitive, especially because you are picking out your own objects and you are assigning them meaning. Many objects that you find, you'll just automatically know. It will tell you what it means. But of course, anytime we're working with symbolism, there's always that layer we kind of have to dig under and dig deeper to get the true meaning of things and see how it fits in the context of everything else. That said, I would not necessarily recommend this as a beginner's form of divination. If you've just stumbled across this video and you have not practiced any form of divination before, I'm not saying don't do it, but I would recommend maybe starting off with a tarot or oracle card deck. Yes, they do still require intuition and interpretation. However, they can be much easier because, first of all, you've got a guidebook right in front of you that most tarot and oracle decks come with. Plus, when you're working with a tarot spread, you have these different positions and each mean a different thing, whether that's a phase of time, a time period, or it's this is for love and over here is career and this is family and this is whatever, that those kind of help shape your context. Now, we can do something similar with bone casting, which again, I'll get to in a second, but it is still a little bit more difficult. In my own experience, I did start with bone casting a few years ago, and to be honest, it was a little bit overwhelming for me at first. I found myself more frustrated than anything else because I was having a lot of trouble interpreting things. So for the past few years, I kind of just stuck to simple, one item a day pulls, or just asking a question and pulling out 3 items as opposed to casting the lot of them. Now, this was very beneficial because it helped me grow my set. It gave me time to grow my set. It also gave me time to become more acquainted with them and also work in other practices of divination. I've done a lot of work with pendulum work and runes as well. I mean, obviously I have a whole playlist about them. But lately, I have really felt my bag of items, my little trinkets, my bones, different things I have in here. I have been feeling this calling out to me lately. So I've been working with them for a few months now, and I have found them to be insanely beneficial, not only for building my intuition, but it's also helped me a lot in my practice overall and with my spiritual connection. So I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and put out a video for it, and here we are. So how do you make them? Now, don't get me wrong, there are tons of sets on Etsy you can just look over and you can buy a big old bag of bones. However, I highly encourage you to make your own set. Like I said, yes, if you just want to work with bones, then by all means, that's what you can do. You can go to different flea markets and stores that actually sell animal bones, and you can purchase them. You can also harvest them, collect them out in the wild if you're comfortable with that sort of thing. But you don't just have to work with bones. I have a very eclectic set of items that I have collected over the years. Some of them are still pieces from the original set I put together. I've taken other items out and I've added more items in. There's even items I've added just in the last month. So this is something you really want to take your time with. Use your intuition. If you are in a store or even at home and you're just looking at items, or you're out for a walk and you stumble across something, if it just calls to you and your intuition speaks to you saying, add this item to the set, do so. If you just instinctually automatically know what the meaning is, great, you're all set. But I know sometimes people prefer to meditate on it, take some more time with it, which I encourage you do over time. You will learn more about them as you work with them. But some people also like to just find things that speak to them, and then they like to assign their own meaning and consecrate them with that meaning. Again, like I said, this is a very, very personal process. This is a form of divination that is designed specifically for you as a user. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't use it to give other people readings, but it is made for your specific interpretations, your energy working with it. Just in the same way that you would build a relationship with a pendulum or a tarot deck or a rune set, you are really building a relationship with these items as you collect them and as you work with them. So aside from just slapping a bunch of random items together, where do you really begin? Where's a solid foundation? In a blog post over on The Traveling Witch, Avery Hart suggests you pick out one item to represent each of the following. The self, meaning, yourself. Health, wealth, family, love, magic, yes, no, evil or bad intentions, male, female, one or many, this would be a two-sided item, truth, other, that's if you want to do a reading for somebody else, this will represent them as opposed to your self item. Now, in my personal collection and my personal practice, this also represents them. So that can stand for somebody who is non-binary or a group of people if the male and female options don't quite fit. And finally, another two-sided item for fated or decision, which indicates whether or not you can change the situation. So I took Avery's list, and that's pretty much what I started with a few years ago. Now, just like mine, your set will probably change and grow over time. Even when I wasn't, consistently working with mine, I was still adding items in kind of as I found them and as they called out to me, and also taking items out. If I was doing, my 1 a day or 3 a day pull, and I found that something kind of just felt stale, or it lost the meaning that it originally had, or it just wasn't working for whatever reason. Now keep in mind, even with that list, you don't even need all of those items to get started. If all you have are 5 items, then hey, just start with 5 items. I just recommend that you make sure you have enough variety in their meanings that you can get kind of a more detailed and cohesive answer. Otherwise, it just gets really confusing and really frustrating. There's really only a few things that I suggest you don't put in there, one of which would be sharp items. Of course, if you are reaching in your bag or in the box container, and for a 1 item pull, 3 item pull, you don't want to be stabbing yourself. Also, avoid any fragile items. That would be feathers or anything that might crumble, like dried flowers or a dried leaf. Also, be careful with soft minerals and, stones, crystals, gems. If they're low on the Mohs hardness scale, yeah, there's a good chance that they're gonna flake apart or get dented or just break while in the bag jumbled up with the other items. Especially if you're like me and you have a bad habit of taking your bag and just vigorously shaking it like, I need answers. So again, when choosing your items, it is better to start off with a small set that is very energetically powerful, that really speaks to you, than to just try to force items in for the sake of having a big set. But while you're waiting for these items to speak up to you, while you're waiting to come across them, keep in mind, they can really be almost anything. I've seen collections with buttons, with seashells, with bottle caps, acorns, coins, sea glass, it's very diverse. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes you will just automatically know what something represents, but other times you really need to sit and meditate with the item. Really study it and observe it. What does it look like? What does it feel like? If you were to utilize this as a spell ingredient, what would it correspond to for you? Also, what's the story behind it? Where did you find it? What were the circumstances that led you to finding it? Keep in mind that many items will carry more than one meaning. I'm sure all of us have read a tarot book and, read a description for a card and been like, wow, that was all over the place. Especially if you are brand new to divination, it seems very disconnected. It seems like some descriptions will list two different things that are completely unrelated. If in working with one of your items, you come up with multiple meanings, whether they appear to be related or not, that's okay. Write all of that down as you're keeping track of these things. Because like I said earlier, context matters. So if you ask a question and you pull an item and one meaning for it makes absolutely no sense in the context of your question, but its other meaning does, well, there you go. And there will be times where you will have a meaning or multiple meanings for an item, and then later on down the line, a new meaning will suddenly come to you. Here are also a couple of other examples of how I have interpreted meaning with my items. So here's one that's pretty straightforward. It's a skeleton charm. To me, this is the equivalent of the death card in tarot. It represents endings, death, letting things go, and transformation. Okay, that one's super easy. Here's another example, a little bit more complicated. This is the top of an amethyst ring. Now you all probably actually saw this on my altar tour a couple months ago, but honestly, it felt wrong there. And I started to get the sense that it had a bigger purpose, so I added it to my bag. This was a ring that broke and I was not able to fix it. The ring was broken. It was unusable and useless. But now, once again, it's been repurposed and it's given new life. So to me, this represents the meaning of finding beauty, finding purpose in something that is hurt, something that is broken, something that has fallen apart, a setback. And when it was a ring, it was given to me as a gift. So it went from being this beautiful gift, it was a beautiful ring that I loved to wear, and then it broke. I couldn't fix it. And then I put it on my altar where ultimately it wasn't doing a whole lot. And that's where I found it to add it to my collection. So this would also represent, do I need to examine any blessings in my life that are being taken for granted, that aren't being utilized to their fullest potential? Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys a few examples to get you started of how, you can find deep meanings in just the most random items. Now, as you come across items and as you kind of come across and intuit their meanings, write it down, put it in your book of shadows. But I do definitely recommend you either do that electronically or you do it in pencil, because your collection will change over time. You will want to add on to meanings. You'll want to change meanings. Like I said, this is so personal. You as a person are constantly growing and changing and evolving, transforming. So is your craft, and therefore so is your very, very personal collection of divination tools. So how to read them? First off, I recommend that you work on a soft surface. I like to work right on the floor. My floor is carpeted, so I'll just toss them down there. Or sometimes I'll also work on my bed. The reason I don't recommend a harder surface is because items will bounce. Sometimes they'll go flying off. And of course, you don't want to break anything. Now, this is entirely optional, but some people like to use a reading cloth or a mat. If you would like to work with one, you can make your own or you can purchase one online. And there are a ton of different styles for these. I'm just going to give you some of the basic ones. One of the most common ones you're going to find looks like a wheel, very similar to like the wheel of the year, but each kind of pie piece in it is going to represent a different area of your life. So you'll have love, career, home, family, and different ones will have different sections. Just look it up on Etsy. You'll find a ton of them on there. Those are really useful if you are kind of just doing a general throw as opposed to having a specific question, or if your question is very broad. It's very similar to the example I was using with like tarot spreads earlier, where like this position is love and this position is your work life and this is your home life, and you get it. You can also use ones that represent your past, present, and future, again similar to the tarot spreads that give you time frame positions. Now the final very common one that you'll see are two circles, a smaller one inside of a larger one. If you're asking a specific question, everything that falls inside of the smaller circle will be directly related to your situation. Everything that falls inside of the larger circle will be indirectly related, and everything that falls completely outside of the circles can simply be disregarded. You can still use this layout and not have a specific question if you just kind of want to open yourself up to the messages of the universe. The inner circle will represent major things in your life that either need to be addressed or you need knowledge of. If it falls between the small circle and the bigger circle, it'll be things that you should know or you should address, but they're not quite as urgent. And again, anything outside of the two circles will be items that you can just disregard, put them back in the bag. Now, you don't have to use these layouts at all. You can definitely just dump everything out and read them as they fall. Or, of course, you can simply visualize these layouts, or sometimes I'll be sitting on the floor and I'll just drag my finger through the carpet to create the lines that I want to use. But if you do choose to work with these, they are very helpful, especially just starting off, because they do provide a little bit of extra guidance. Now, if you think you might want to experiment a little bit with these layouts, but you don't want to shell out $30 on a cloth that you're not entirely sure you're going to use, I did create some very, very affordable printables. They're in my Etsy shop. The link to them is down below in the description box. I created the past, present, and future one, as well as one with the two circles. Now, keep in mind, this is a PDF. They will come as the size of a piece of paper. However, you can always blow them up and print them out on something a little bit bigger at home, but they're really just for practice and experimentation. Actual cloths and mats do tend to be much larger surfaces for you to work on. And I do suggest you print it out and then just set it right down on carpeted floor, or again, a soft surface. The paper might provide a little bit of bounce, but like I said, it's just for practice. If it works out for you and you love them, great, but that's a big reason why I keep them at a very, very low price, because they're not intended to be a permanent solution. Okay, so you've got your collection and you've got your space, whether that's just a plain soft surface or you're using a cloth. What you're going to do next, of course, as always, is prepare your mind and prepare your space. Whatever that is for you, if that's casting a circle, dimming the lights, lighting a candle, or some incense. And then, of course, just like with any divination practice, I want you to meditate until you achieve a good amount of relaxation and a clear mind. From there, either focus on your question, focus on the issue that you want some insight or clarity into, or simply open yourself up to whatever messages you need to receive. Have your bag and either stir the contents around in there physically or shake it up, whatever your style is. And then you can either dump them outright straight from the container, but I know for me, I tend to get more of a clumping, awkward pattern when I do that. So personally, I like to hold it in my hands, charge it up with the thoughts of my questions, with the issue, whatever it is, and then I release everything. Now, before you go dumping everything out, if you have a piece that represents you or represents the person that you're reading for, you can do one of two things. You can leave it in with the rest of the items and let it fall where it will, or you can simply remove it, place it in the center of where you're going to be dropping everything, and let it remain there. This is just one of those things that I suggest you try both ways and kind of figure out what works better for you, what is easier for you to read. All right, now once you've cast everything out, you're pretty much on your own. Like I said, this is deeply personal, deeply intuitive, and interpretive. I cannot tell you what your items mean. I cannot tell you what your groupings mean, but I will tell you, once again, take a look at each of your items. What do they mean individually? What do they mean in the context of your question? What do they mean in their own separate groups? What positions did certain things fall into? Are certain things overlapping? You also want to examine what everything means together as a whole, especially if you have items that got removed. What do the leftovers have to say as a full story. You want to look at the individual items as words. Each word is probably going to be grouped into a sentence, and then when you look at all the small groups together, you've got a full paragraph. If you're using a cloth, that will make this whole process much easier, but either way, this is a process you want to take slowly. Really mull it over and examine everything. If you feel like you're getting stuck and you're getting a little bit frustrated, either take a break, walk away for a little bit, or even if you need to clean up, take a picture of it and check that out later. I did mention a 3-item pull earlier. Now this is also a really simple way you could do it, a single or 3-item pull. This is really good for warm-ups if you don't really have time for a full reading, or if you're just still getting acquainted with them and getting, some practice in. In the morning, take a moment and clear your mind. Ask the question, what needs my attention today? Or what should I expect to get out of my day? And then simply pull one item out. You could ask that same question or ask something else that's maybe a little bit heftier, but save the major life choice questions for when you have time to do a full spread. But you can also just simply pull out 3 items, one after the other, line them up. Look at each one individually, and then of course, I know I'm repeating this a lot, all 3 of them together. So if you're planning to start your collection and you already have a couple of items together, or if you already have a full set, I would love to hear what kind of interesting items are in yours, and if you feel like sharing, maybe some of the things that those items represent. I also encourage you to post a picture of your set on Instagram and tag me in it because I would love to see it. Every collection is always so unique. I find them so interesting, so please show me what you've got. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like. If you're brand new here, welcome. Please subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notifications for when I put out new videos and when I am live streaming. I think that's everything. I have my April vlog coming up this Sunday. I'll see you all on Sunday.